Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is WatchArtSci, the art and science of watch collection. Today, what we're going to take a look at are some controversy in rankings. And we'll be getting into that in a second, but we're also going to go ahead with the rankings that we've been working on. Okay, but first, we have to take a look at the watch of the week. This watches of the week is an A-Long in Zurine. Uh, I usually say A. Langenson, but I'm trying to say the correct pronunciation. This is a gorgeous watch that Kenny has. It's a datograph flyback, and as you can see, it's got a beautiful dial on it with the date, uh, different second indicators, a couple different second indicators, and and you can see in the back it's a gorgeously finished watch, caliber L95 1.1. It has a hand wound movement, which is my favorite because that means every day you get to handle your watch. It has a column wheel chronograph with a flyback function, and it's got 405 parts, including 40 jewels and 4 screwed chantons. These things are rather dear at about $40,000. It's really nice. By the way, Kitty has a store in I think it's Newport Beach, California, and the online version is at Jewels on Time. I put the URL in case you want to take a look at Kenny's store. By the way, too, I got to say this. I asked Kenny if I could use his watch for the watch of the week, and he let me do it, which I'm very happy of. But he didn't ask to give a plug to his online store, but I thought, that's a nice thing to do. Okay, so now let's take a look at what we're going to do is to get to ranking a watch. Now, what I want to start off with is a watch that maybe it's been somewhat of an ugly duckling among the FP Journe watches. A lot of people look at this and say, well, that just doesn't fit. It was originally developed for a person who was a big fan of FP Journe, and they were a marathon and triathlon runner, and they wanted something lighter. So FP Journe made this watch out of aluminum, including an aluminum movement. All right, well, I don't know how well the watch is doing, but it's you have to really like it. But in terms of someone says, well, this is for marathons and runners and so forth, and it's by FP Journe. Well, the FP Journe is usually associated with something a bit more fancy. Now, let's say that I wanted to take up advertising. I had done this little thing on one of the Facebook watch discussion pages, and I thought, well, let's take a look at how we might add some more emotional attachment to it. So what I did is that I put together the FP Journe Noctus Sport, which is the name of it, is that who would dare wear something like this? First of all, you have the outlaw biker from hell. Then you have the boyfriend of the girl of the Russian model who rides topless in rally cars. And then you have the guy who's the only test pilot crazy enough to take the plane to the edge of space. Okay, now each one of those represents an emotional tie to the watch. The outlaw biker from hell, nobody likes people to mess with them. And if you sort of like, wear this, no one's going to mess with you. That's a nice thing. The Russian model, this is a sort of this fantasy girl, and who's a lot of fun. And finally, this crazy test pilot who's got a job that does some really interesting stuff. Now, you put these together, with a watch, and you have this emotional attachment to someone no one's going to mess with, this dynamite girlfriend, and a coolest job that you can imagine, at least that I can imagine. I mean, it was a beer testing job and pretty good too. So here you have this emotional attachment to the watch now. Now, the reason that I use this is because one of the readers, or the viewers, I guess, said they don't choose their watch on the basis of anything other than sort of a gut feeling. Okay, well, that's understandable. A lot of people do a lot of stuff that way, and that's perfectly fine. The issue that I wanted to bring up is that you have to examine, well, where did this come from? Patek Philippe has something that somehow you inherit this upper class status by owning your watch. Other ones are men of action. Excuse me. Other ones have these people who do all of these different kinds of things, or James Bond, or somebody doing something very exciting. Okay, now most people, excuse me again, work at jobs with less than optimal bosses, hours, and pay. But so what the watch is, and what all advertisement tries to do, it tries to connect up some emotional connection. And the idea, of course, is that you're out minding your own business and you see something that had been associated with all of these fun things, and you say, if I get that watch, somehow that will be connected to me. The James Bond, for example. Okay, let's stop a second, just sort of not to be the Grinch here. But none of us, if I go out and buy a watch that's been in a James Bond movie, I'm not going to be James Bond. There's no way that's going to happen. But so that becomes part of a fantasy. On the other hand, I can do my homework and find out about a watch and get a really good watch. My watch I have on today is my Zenith. This was a watch as a lot of you participated in when I was looking for GMT. All right, and this was done on the basis of some other buying that I had done. So this suddenly went from I could afford about $7,000 down to only $1,000 because I ran off and bought something else. All right, so in setting up our rating system, I thought you got to keep in mind is that we're trying to remove all of the emotional aspects that have nothing to do with reality. It's we're removing the hyperbole and trying to look at things in a clear light. So the first thing I did was to set up a number of tiers, and the tiers aren't that different from some other tiers, and I didn't try to copy anybody's tiers. I just sort of looked at, well, this is sort of what's going on in the watch business. At the very top, you have the masters. You have people like FPV Journe and Girard-Perregaux. Their watches tend to be crazy expensive. They're made in very small numbers. So those we don't have a lot of those around. Okay. The next level is high horology. Now, these are companies like Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and a number of other companies. And one of the things that I think we have to consider about any kind of rating system is there's going to be some levels that you go above and below sort of your general level for the watch. For example, Patek Philippe in 1989 had produced this most complicated watch that a mechanical watch that had been done up to that time. Before that, there was a Leroy watch from 1900 to 1989 that had sort of held the records for the number of complications. And then in 2013, Vacheron Constantin came along and had one even more complicated. Okay, so that sort of pokes it up to the master's level, but the great bulk of the watches that they have, we can say yes, they're high horology in terms of everything that they do with it, but sometimes they poke up a little higher. With luxury watches, Rolex seems to be, to me, it's the iconic luxury watch. It works well. It's a good-looking watch. It's well produced. It's just very nice, stable watch. That's luxury. It's a very nice watch. Zenith is another one. Zenith has flights up into high horology, and in fact, I think this has been mentioned before. Rolex used one of the movements, used their El Primero at one time. However, both of these watches in the luxury category, they have their own in-house movements, or they use a movement at the same level. Okay, now the next one is what I call design luxury. And the luxury is pretty much in the dial, I'll put it that way. They'll use, for example, Raymond Weil and Bell and Ross. They'll throw in an ETA movement, but they have a nice looking design to them. I really like the airplane parts, the instrument panel type of watches that Bell and Ross has. I used to be a pilot. Okay, and so you can get some of these watches, and the design luxury, some brands like Cartier have some that are definitely design luxuries running on an ETA, but they also have some up in the luxury level with the movements that are in-house at Cartier. Raymond Weil, they make no pretensions to being anything other than what they are. They don't like to tell anyone what their movements are from. But that seems to be the case with the luxury design. And finally, there's a standard watch. These are watches like Swatch and Fossil. They don't make any pretense to being luxury or anything else, just standard watches. Now, I added another tier called transitional, and these are watches that seem to be going from one level to another. And I put in Bremont and Leroy. Leroy has a very storied history, but I'm not sure which way they're headed now. They're either headed higher or lower. They're very much in a transition now. They were bought by the Festina Group, and we'll see what happens with them. Bremont, on the other hand, I think that they're moving upward. They've been slowly but surely gathering all of the production facilities to have their own in-house movement, which I think will move them into the luxury category. They already have in my opinion, one of the best cases in the business. Okay, so those are the tiers, and what I'd like to get from you, if I could, is where do you think different watches would go in these tiers, and anything else you want to have about them? Okay, now in addition to tiers, I also put in what I called domains, and domains are sort of a horizontal kind of classification. You have a formal dress watch, like you put in a Patek Philippe Calatrava formal dress. Then you have business dress, and I think right now that people talk about dress watches and sports watches, but there's really a lot of different kinds of dress. If you have you're in, when I say business, I mean any kind of occupation. You show up to work every day, and you're doing something for some company, and you wear a watch. Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Control is that kind of sort of category. It's not for fancy things, but it's a nice watch. So that's for that. An outdoor watch. An outdoor can be a lot of different things, obviously. I put in a Breitling Emergency, which is because I had in mind hiking. And a Breitling Emergency is for serious hiking. You go out and you get lost, I guess the Breitling will bring you home. Um, the other category, the next category is multiple, and this is the Rolex Submariner. I think if you could have one watch, just one, and you could use it for all different kinds of occasions, probably be the Rolex Submariner or something pretty close to that. The tool watch, this would be a typical tool watch, would be like a pilot's watch. The IWC pilot's watch is pretty much of an iconic pilot's watch. And finally, I have something, I had another one called Stress. Now, a stress watch is a watch that is meant to handle tough times. The Bremont Supermarine S500 is a perfect example of that. It's got that tough Bremont case, and it's the kind of thing they'll take for to the South Pole or to the North Pole or someplace where you got to have a pretty tough watch, and I can't think of anything better than a Bremont for that. Okay, so those are the different domains. Okay, up to this point, we built a framework. We built some compartments. We can put some watches in that we can say, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want to spend, and this is what I hope to get. And this is all that the categories are for, to try to match what we want with reality as far as watches are concerned. Now, the other part, or the very first part of this video, where we talked about the emotional kinds of advertising that is done, these are realities. These are not fairy tales. And so we have to understand when we're getting something, we're always getting something to meet some emotional need. Now, the difference between an emotional need and getting that need met has to do with a certain kind of reality for it. If it's make-believe, okay, there's nothing wrong with make-believe, but let's face it, you have to understand it as that. I think that watches are more, or at least for us, otherwise we'd all have quartz watches. There's more to it than just something that ticks on your wrist more or less accurately. In fact, even better accurately. It's got to have something that adds to who we are and what we want. And so every time we look at our watch, whether it's my nice, faithful Zenith or it's something fancy, it's my really gorgeous, but I think delicate Calatrava, I get something out of that. And you get something emotional, but it's not because I just sort of blindly walked into them. I got all the information to find out what I wanted. So apart from advertisements, we have to learn how to separate what we want from what we're told we want. And the way to do that is to study, to find out about a watch, find everything you can. And I think you'll have it and you'll enjoy it more because you know it better. Okay, we've got our watch giveaway on Sunday with our review, with the collection review. The next week we're going to continue this, but we're going to get into something a bit more controversy. Primarily the whole issue of measurement. We start measurement. Measurement's the most difficult thing. We have the framework. Next, we need the measures, and that's the tough part. So, anyhow, giveaway on Sunday. Let's hear your comments about this. What do you think of the categories that were set up with the different domains and the different tiers? Anything you think we should add? And also, too, I'd like you to do this if you would. See if you can take your watches and see if they fit in these categories that we set up somehow. And if they don't, say, hey, this didn't work out too well. Maybe we ought to do this, or maybe we ought to fix that. Okay, see you on Sunday, and leave a comment, and you can always subscribe. You'd be more than welcome. Bill Sanders for WatchArtSci.